Okay, today we're going to start by putting the light wash on our cartoons. So you can see I've got my cartoon here on my tilted board. I have my computer set up here for reference and my trays set up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I've got my eraser. I'm going to lighten this pencil because pencil, once it gets paint on top of it, it's permanent. You can't erase it. And I don't like these dark lines. I like my lines to be much, much softer. So I'm going to go back and just softly erase. Don't push down hard with your eraser because watercolor paper, if you ruin the texture of it, it ruins the paper and it'll be awful. So you have to be very, very light with your eraser. And I'm just going to come along and soften these lines up real quick here. That way they don't come through so much when I'm painting. I'm not erasing them completely. You can still see them. I'm just softening them up quite a bit. If you drew really lightly and they're already super soft, you don't have to do this step. If you notice, I'm using the side of my eraser and I've got my pencil back here so I don't have the pressure on the tip of my eraser. This keeps my eraser more in a soft movement, kind of like when we're shading, so I'm not ruining the paper. Watercolor paper is very fragile. And I can go quickly doing this, large strokes. Okay, get rid of all your erasers, shavings. Okay, your next step is to mix up your colors. So we're going to look at a reference from here. Okay, so when I look at my Jerry, I want the lightest colors. So I'm going to mix up this light brown here. And when I paint it, I'm going to paint every single area that has brown, even this darker stuff. So I can always put more dark paint on top. Watercolor is layered. So I'm going to paint the belly and the feet and the body and the head and the ear. I'm going to do the same thing with the gray. I'm going to mix up the light gray and paint all the hat, even this band. Okay, and then I'm going to come over to Jerry and I'm going to mix up this light gray here. And I'm going to paint all the areas that are gray, even the dark gray areas, because I can go back and paint on top. For this pink, I'm going to mix it up, but I'm going to try to nail this pink down because I only need to paint it once. Same thing with this color. I want this brown color to be that color. I don't have to go back and paint the belly 3 times. So I try when I'm painting it and when I'm mixing it, I'm trying to get the color, you can see I've already got it mixed up right there, the same value. I don't have to paint it 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to paint any blacks like these because blacks will tend to bleed and run. They are the very last thing you paint. So I've mixed up all the colors, all the light colors for Jerry. I've mixed up all the light colors for Tom, including the eyes. And I've mixed up the blue in the background. And now I went off the color blue of the clouds and I'm going to paint the entire sky that blue because I can go back and paint this one on top. And then I've mixed up this light green down here for the bushes. I'm going to paint that over all the bushes and I'll go back and paint the darker greens on top. So if you come over to my palette here, you can see I've already previously mixed it up. I've got them in order. So I've got Jerry's colors here. Here's his body color, the hat color, and this is the color for around his mouth, the like little cheek things and the little mouth thing here, because it's not quite white. Any area that is white, you never ever touch. It just doesn't get paint. That's just paper. And I've got Jerry's colors. This is his light gray, which I had to put a lot of blue in. The pink for the ear, which also has yellow in it. The yellow for his eyes, yellow-green for his iris, the blue sky, and the green for the ground. So now we're going to paint. Now, a couple things you need to remember when painting. Pick an area to paint. I'm not going to start with the background first because the background touches almost everything. And you can't touch 2 wet areas. Like I can't touch the wet sky to the wet body because right where they touch, they'll start bleeding and mixing together and then your paint's ruined. So I'm going to paint Jerry first. That'll give him time to dry, and I'll come over and paint Tom because neither of those touch. And then when those are both completely dry, I'll go and paint the sky in the background. I'll have to let it dry again, and then I'll paint the bushes. So here we go. So I've got my light tan here, and I'm just going to start in the ear. We're going to pull good clean edges. You have to stay inside your edges because there's no going back and fixing the edges. Using nice back and forth method, overlapping. There's my little water droplet I have to soak up. So I just dried out my brush and soaked it up. Now remember, this is my light tan. I will be going over this one for the darker areas on my second layer. There's going to be 3 layers to watercolor. There's a light layer, a medium layer, and a dark layer. So your light layer is due for this assignment, and then on Wednesday you'll have your medium layer due, and then on Friday is your dark layer. If you haven't changed your settings on your computer, so the picture will stay up longer, I suggest you do that before you start. I've changed mine to like every 10 minutes it goes off. It was originally 4 minutes. You can work in 4 minutes, not me. Now the other nice thing about this is because it is a light layer, you're going over a lot more areas at once, so you don't have to get real. It's not like you have to avoid lots of areas like you will have to for the medium and the dark. You get to block in a lot more. Except for little areas like fingers. I try to keep this going fast so I don't end up getting streaks.
You missed a finger.
I know, I'll go back and get it with a small brush. So if you notice here, I got a little bit of a line, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it up a little bit so it'll blend out. Because I went back and painted that hand, which is a really good technique to help it not get any lines. We don't want any lines in our picture. We want it to all dry smooth in one wash. You didn't notice I have my paper towel in my other hand, so whenever I need to dry up a drip, I can. I'll switch to my little brush so I can get that little finger over there. And there we go. And that is Jerry's light wash over the whole body. Okay. Now, because I don't want to paint a wet and a wet here, I'm not going to paint Jerry's hat next. So I'm going to come over to Tom's and start painting Tom's light gray. I'm going to paint right over those top of those eyebrows, because I will go back and paint those on later. Especially with these light colors, you should be able to see them later. If you don't know, watercolor dries lighter than when it's wet. I'll go back with the small brush and fine tune those in a little bit. Because I can't get those little pieces of hair with this big one. Oh, that's my little brush. There. Okay, on to the other side. All right, there's Jerry's, or Tom's base color. And then I would go back and keep painting.